I used to think I'd grow old in peace, sit on a porch somewhere with my knitting, surrounded by laughter and warm coffee cups. But life, as I've learned, by 76 has a way of rewriting even the simplest stories. My name is Marilyn Taylor. I was a school librarian for over 30 years, the kind who knew every kid's favorite book by heart, and kept a secret stash of peppermints for the tough days. I was good at my job. I loved it. But I retired early to help raise my grandchildren. When my son's job got too demanding and my daughter... These days, I fold Kendra's silk blouses with care, line Daniel's ties up in neat rows. I know the difference between their dishwasher settings. I keep quiet when I load it wrong, but it's the small things that get to you, the tiny... Or when I suggest trying a new casserole recipe, and she says, "Let's just keep things simple, Marilyn." And then there was last Thursday. The dinner, we were all gathered around the table. Daniel at the head, Kendra to his right, the two little ones wiggling in their chairs. I'd made chicken pot pie from scratch, the way Daniel liked it when he was 10. I even crimped the edges like I used to, just for nostalgia's sake. "Smells amazing," he said as he sat down. My heart lifted, but Kendra barely glanced up from her phone. "Hope it's not too salty," she muttered, stabbing at the crust. I bit my tongue. I always did. Halfway through dinner, they started talking about summer plans. A beach trip, apparently. I hadn't heard about it. "Oh, and we could do that dolphin tour," Kendra said. "The kids would love it." I smiled, trying to join in. "That sounds wonderful. I could help keep an eye on the little ones if you like." She didn't even look at me when she said it. "We'll manage. You should rest. It's not really your thing. Anyway." My fork paused midair. Daniel glanced at me briefly, then looked down at his plate. No one spoke. The silence was thick. Sound of canned laughter spilled in, but the ache in my chest didn't budge. Daniel built it when they bought the house with my late husband's tools. My husband, Richard, he would have hated how they treat me now. Richard had a way of making me feel seen. I wasn't background noise to him. I was the reason he whistled while fixing the gutters. I was the one he looked for in every crowd. We used to dance in this kitchen, barefoot and clumsy, even in our 60s. He'd pull me close and say, "No one puts my girl in the corner." The one no one pulls out unless they have to. I dried, my hands slowly feeling the wrinkles that time had carved into my skin. I used to believe those lines, told stories, laughter, love, life lived fully. But lately they just feel like creases in something worn out. As I turned off the light and padded softly back to my room, one thought lingered in my mind. I had spent my whole life making others feel important. When exactly did I stop mattering? And why did no one seem to notice? The house buzzed with anticipation that morning. She'd asked for a princess-themed birthday, tiaras, glitter, and all. I'd spent the night before cutting little paper crowns and curling ribbons for the party favors. I was up early, the kind of help that goes unnoticed unless it's missing by 10. The living room was a half-decorated war zone. Kendra stood in the center, arms crossed, frowning at a tangled roll of streamers like it had personally offended her. I stepped toward her gently. "Would you like me to help hang those?" "I can stand on the step stool. I've done it before." She didn't look up. "It's fine." I smiled, careful not to push. "I can handle the food too, if you'd rather focus on decorations." She turned to me, slow and deliberate, and in the calmest, clearest voice, she said, "Stop acting like you matter. You're just here, just here." It wasn't screamed. "Honestly, I think it's more stressful when you try to help." He paused, clearly having heard enough. To know the air had shifted, but he didn't say anything. He didn't ask what she meant. Alone, holding a bundle of pink napkins in my hands, like they might crumble from the weight of what had just been said, something in me cracked. Shrinking down, staying quiet, giving more than I took because I thought that's what mothers did. A chair in the corner. Past the family portraits, the hand-painted school projects, the hallway mirror that no longer showed me someone useful. I reached my room and shut the door with a quiet click. Inside, the afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, lighting the walls I'd hung with memories. There was the painting Daniel made in kindergarten, the embroidered quote from my retirement party, rested on my shoulder. Sophie had drawn a flower on my shirt with sidewalk chalk. The one Richard had carved when he still had the hands for it. I stared at the faces, my own smile suddenly unfamiliar. Like a mask I couldn't remember putting on. "Just here," I whispered aloud. I sat down on the edge of the bed, photo in hand. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would, but sometimes, and slid the photo inside, face down. The sound of children laughing floated in from the yard, muffled by the glass window. I used to be the one who made them laugh. I was the first person Sophie ever reached for. I was the one who got Daniel through a dozen scraped knees, heartbreaks, and broken model airplanes. But now, not rage. I knew one thing with complete certainty. I would never let myself be treated like furniture again. The house was still when I made the decision. No one yelled. That made it final. Not the sharp kind that comes after an argument, but the dull, permanent kind. The kind that settles in when you realize your presence has stopped mattering altogether. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed with a small leather notebook in my lap. It was the same one I used when Richard and I were planning our retirement. Full of dreams that had since become echoes, trips to the coast, lemon trees on a porch, a guest room for grandkids who actually wanted to visit. One by one, I tore those pages out and folded them into a neat stack. Then I stood, opened the closet, a little threadbare at the cuffs, but warm and real. A few old photographs, not the ones on display in the hallway, but the quiet ones. Richard tying my shoe at a picnic, Daniel asleep on my chest as a newborn, me holding a library card, smiling like it was gold. A book of poetry. Inside was everything they'd forgotten. I had documents, letters, account balances, and the kind of knowledge that could change more than just dinner seating. I zipped the suitcase slowly, savoring the sound, not because I was rushing, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment I chose myself on the nightstand, I left a note in my neatest handwriting. Take care of the kids. I'll be fine. No explanations, no bitterness. For them to know I wasn't lost. Cry. I booked a small cottage on the edge of a lake 2 towns over. It belonged to an old friend from book club, Margie Thomas, who'd long since moved in with her daughter and left the cottage empty. A magazine, when I called, she answered with a surprised, "Well, I'll be damned, Marilyn Taylor." I told her I needed some space. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Keys under the red pot. Stay as long as you like." I slipped out the side door. With my suitcase the same way I used to sneak in late from PTA meetings, no one saw me go. There was no cinematic goodbye. No wet eyes at the window. Just the whisper of my own footsteps on the driveway as I walked toward the cab I'd arranged. Inside the car, the driver adjusted his mirror and asked politely, "Long trip?" I smiled softly, meeting my own eyes in the reflection. "No," I said, "just a new one." The park where Richard once proposed, I didn't feel regret. I felt light. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of being useful or present or tolerable. I wasn't performing for anyone's comfort. I was just Marilyn again. It made me wonder how many women had done this in silence, packed their stories into suitcases, slipped out of roles that no longer fit, and reclaimed their names one quiet mile at a time. Maybe we don't need to burn bridges. Maybe we just need to cross them. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most radical act of love, creaky and perched right on the edge of a sleepy lake that didn't care what time it was or who was watching. The roof sloped unevenly. The front porch sagged slightly. It was perfect. The first time I turned the key and stepped inside, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like an owner. Not of the property, but of my own time. Just big enough for one person. A fact that brought me deep joy. I made a pot of tea, found a chipped blue mug with a hummingbird on it. Want to rush? But the words flowed easier than I expected. I wrote about everything. The sound of frogs at night. The taste of fresh lake air. The way my body felt different when it wasn't bracing for the next dismissal on the 3rd day. I met Hallie. She was maybe 16, all elbows and frizzy, curls with a book tucked under one arm and a notebook under the other. "Just didn't want to scare you?" She jumped slightly but smiled. "You live in Margie's place now." "I do, temporarily. You're right." From that moment, Hallie became a small part of my days. She visited with questions about poetry, about life, about whether it was weird to not want to go to prom. I never offered advice unless she asked. Mostly, we just sat on the dock and wrote in silence. She reminded me of myself, a little unsure, a little stubborn, and already carrying more weight than people realized. One evening, she asked me, "Did you always know where you were going?" I paused, watching the sun smear gold across the lake. "No," I said quietly, "but I always knew when it was time to stop pretending I hadn't already arrived." That night, I opened my journal and wrote those words down. Then I found myself writing about Richard. We met in a college library. He was looking for a book on carpentry. I was looking for someone who saw me, not someone who'd glance past me. In a room full of louder women, someone who noticed the way I always rewound the film projector at work even when no one asked. Someone who loved that I sang when I folded laundry. Richard saw me when we married. Fall asleep again. How my voice became background noise in my own family. But here, in this small cottage, I wasn't invisible. Not because anyone was watching me, but because I was finally watching myself again. One morning, I put a little sign on the table. By the front door, it was just a slip of paper, written in my now steady pen. Marilyn Taylor lives here. She always has. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Assumed silence means weakness. That politeness is passivity. that a woman who folds laundry and minds her words must not know much about the world. I might fix a leaky roof, but you're the one who knows how to keep a house standing. And he was right. When he passed, I didn't crumble. I mourned deeply in every room of that house, in every sock I paired without him, but I didn't fall apart because Richard had trusted me with everything, including the pension he'd built over decades working at the steel yard. The money wasn't massive, but it was enough. Enough for a cautious woman with a good head and time on her hands to do something with. So I did, quietly, consistently. I split it into thirds. One part I invested in rental properties, modest homes in nearby towns managed by a friend's son I trusted. Another I tucked into a trust, letting it grow slowly. The last I kept liquid, enough to help me if the tides ever turned. Over the years, while I was being thanked for casseroles and carpool runs, little table by the window in the lake cottage, the morning sun warming my tea, I opened the folder I'd brought with me, the one no one knew existed, a paper trail of a life that had been far more than folded towels and birthday cards. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. I said, voice firm. Her name was Amelia, younger than I expected but shrub-eyed. She came to the cottage 2 days later, professional but warm, one carefully structured trust, and a decision I'd like to set up a college fund. I told her, handing over the note Hallie had written me last week. It was a poem, raw and beautiful, about finding your voice. It ended with, I don't want to survive in this world. I want to matter in it. She mattered to me. Make it generous, I said. She's got more future in her than most. Nodded. And your son? Just took notes. Leave them one item. Just one. Inside was a picture of Daniel as a boy sitting on my lap, both of us beaming like the world was brand new. Send them this, I said. Not sold. They're meant to build, not to be cashed in. We finished the paperwork by dusk. When Amelia left, I stood on the porch and watched her car drive away, the dust curling behind her like ribbon. I felt not bitter, just steady. For so long, I believed power was loud. Sharp words, but now I knew better. Power was patient, quiet. It wore house slippers and packed school lunches and smiled when it was ignored. That house, but I was about to make sure it echoed in theirs for a very long time. I waited a year, not because I needed time to figure things out, but because I wanted them to feel the weight of my absence before they received the reminder of what my presence once meant. The package wasn't large, just a shoebox, wrapped neatly in brown paper and tied with string. Inside were 3 items, one of value, one of memory, and one of truth. The silver music box had once sat on Daniel's dresser when he was a boy. Richard and I had bought it. On our trip to Vermont, it played Edelweiss when wound, and Daniel used to fall asleep to its gentle tune. It had a small chip on the lid and faint scratches from tiny fingers who tried to pry it open. He once told me when he was 7, "This is the sound I want to hear when I grow up and miss you." I'd kept it all these years, cleaned it, protected it now. I was giving it back. Next was a flash drive tucked inside a pale blue envelope. On it, photos, home videos, scanned drawings, and voice recordings, family holidays, school recitals, Sophie's first words, which, by the way, were Nana Shoo. There was even a clip of Daniel's wedding day, me holding his hand just before the ceremony, whispering, "You're going to be a good man, no matter what." He had squeezed my hand back and said, "Only because I had the best woman raising me." I suppose memory is funny that way. It softens what we say and sharpens what we forget. Finally, the letter I wrote it in one sitting, on cream stationery, with the pen Richard gave me on our last Christmas together. Dear Daniel, you once said, or rather, let it be said, that I didn't matter, that I was just here. This box is proof that I once did the music box. You loved it so much. You begged me to wind it every night, even when you were too old for lullabies. The flash drive, every single memory you carry quietly, I carried louder. I forgave without apology. I folded so you wouldn't feel the weight of me, and yet, I am clear. I left not to punish you, but to remind myself I still had a name outside of motherhood, and to show you, in case you ever needed proof, that the quietest ones often carry the most. With whatever remains, Mom, I added one more line. Before sealing the envelope, and if Sophie ever asks who kept her crown from her 6th birthday party, tell her I did. I taped the package shut with shaking hands, not from nerves, but from something much deeper. The kind of tremble that comes when the storm is finally moving past you? She asked. Yes, I said softly, but it's already broken. Back at the house, it arrived 3 days later. I didn't see it myself, of course, but Hallie, sweet, curious Hallie, biked by their street later that week and told me what she'd overheard through the open kitchen window. Kendra had opened the box. She found the music box. First, frowned at it like it might explode. Then, tossed it onto the table. "This is junk," she muttered. Then the flash drive. Daniel picked it up, plugged it into his laptop. As the screen lit up with photos and video clips, Hallie said she saw his face change, like something slipped. Like the mask of adulthood fell away. Saw him reach toward the screen as if trying to touch the past. Then he read the letter. Kendra didn't finish it, but Daniel said nothing, just held the letter quietly, folded it back up. According to Hallie, he didn't speak much for the rest of the evening, and I suppose I didn't need apologies or flowers or belated epiphanies. I just needed him to know that I hadn't vanished. I'd simply chosen to leave something behind. It was the second Thursday in May, the kind of spring day where the lake looks like a mirror and the lilacs finally start to bloom. I'd just clipped a few to place in a vase by the window. For the soft dirt path, she looked like a stranger on foreign soil, and maybe that's what this place was to her. Before she could knock, "Well, this is unexpected." She offered a forced smile. "I was in the area. This visit was about something, and we both knew what come in," I said evenly. The handwritten labels on my spice jars, the stack of poetry journals by the reading chair. I watched her take it all in. The space was modest, but filled with care. Everything had a purpose. Everything had me in it. "I thought you might still be at Daniel's," she said, trying to sound casual. I set the kettle on the stove. "That chapter ended. I got your package," she added after a pause. "Well, we did. I know. I didn't read the letter," she added quickly, as if it earned her points. "But Daniel, he's been quiet lately. A little off." I nodded. Silence has a way of revealing things. Tense. We all said things we shouldn't have. I didn't respond. I poured water into the teapot, added a bag of chamomile, and let the steam rise between us. She tried again. "The kids miss you." That one tugged at me just a little. She didn't speak from memory. She spoke from strategy. When I didn't take the bait, she cleared her throat. "Daniel's been looking into your—" Now we were getting to it. I brought the teacups to the table. "But I do think maybe we could start over." Still polished, still curated, but her eyes, they darted too much. Her mouth twitched when I didn't agree. "Immediately you had what I built," I said gently. "A home. My love," she blinked. "You had me." I folded my hands on the table. "But you never wanted that. You wanted control, applause, gratitude on demand. You wanted what I represented, stability, loyalty, support, but only if it was silent and obedient." She tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "And now that it's gone, you think I'm withholding something." I smiled softly, kindly, but with iron underneath. "You lost me." Her mouth opened, then shut. The teacup in front of her remained untouched. Outside, the wind rustled the trees gently. A bird called out from the dock. Peace continued, uninterrupted. "You may tell Daniel he's welcome to write. Not for inheritance. For closure. If he needs it. As for you, I wish you well." She stood slowly. For her here, and I wouldn't be doing it now. After she drove off, I returned to the table and lifted my own cup. It was still warm and just the right amount of bitter. The sun was beginning its slow descent over the lake. I sat on the porch with a wool blanket over my knees, my pen moving steadily across the last pages of my journal, the one I had titled, quietly, on the inside cover months ago, "Proof of Life." Not proof that I'd simply existed, but that I'd lived, that I'd mattered. The journal wasn't meant for anyone else. Not my son, not the grandkids, not even Hallie, though she'd asked once if she could read it someday. I told her maybe. When she was older, when she could understand the full shape of a woman's silence, was short. May 18th. The air smells like lilacs. I cut too many for the vase, but kept them anyway. They deserve to spill over sometimes, like joy. The cottage feels like home, but because no one has tried to erase me here, I exist in every drawer, every book spine, every morning, and today, I got a letter. I paused. It was pink-lined with tiny white stars and addressed in the looping, enthusiastic handwriting of someone still discovering who they were. Hallie. I opened it slowly, the way I'd taught her. Press your finger beneath the flap. Don't rip. Dear Marilyn, I got into Emerson, full ride creative writing track. The one you cried over, but didn't say you cried over. You said once that stories are survival, that people need to hear from quiet voices, the ones who notice the smallest details. So I'm going to tell stories, and I'm going to carry your voice in mine. Thank you for the books, the tea, the listening, the believing. You didn't just change my life, you taught me how to own it. Love, Hallie. P.S. I still have your Emily Dickinson book. I'm writing in the margins too. I hope that's okay. I folded the letter back into its envelope and held it for a moment. For decades, but it was this girl, this stubborn, whip-smart teen with a pencil always behind her ear, who reminded me what legacy really looked like. It wasn't measured in birthdays attended or dinners cooked. It was measured in the way you make someone feel seen and what they do with that light when you hand it to them. I looked around the cottage at the mismatched mugs, the drying herbs hanging by the sink, the quilt I'd started piecing together last winter. None of it was grand, none of it expensive, but everything here had me in it. I was no longer the extra chair at someone else's table. I had built my own small, sturdy, hand-sanded with care. The sun slipped lower, painting the sky in a soft bruise of purples and golds. I opened the final page of my journal and, in my steadiest hand, wrote my closing lines. She told me to stop acting like I mattered, so I left her something that did, and now, I matter more than ever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs reminding. You don't have to raise your voice to reclaim your worth. Comment below, have you ever chosen peace over permission? We'd love to hear your story.